It's winter time and really cold outside. Do you have something to keep your neck warm? I'm Jan from YouMakeItSimple.com. I have a super easy fleece neck warmer sewing tutorial. It's a 10-minute project. They're double layered. You can make them reversible or all one color. They're cozy, warm. You can bring them up over your chin, over your mouth and nose. Give you that warmth and coverage that you need when you're skiing or out and about. You can make them any size for adults and children. I have a free PDF pattern that you can download and print if you want to. I'll put the link in the description below. They make great gifts. You can sew a bunch up in no time at all. Whip up a pair of fingerless mittens, which I have a tutorial that you can watch. This will be a quick video tutorial. Let's get started. The materials and items that you'll need to make your neck warmer is a piece of fleece. We'll go over the measurements in just a minute. A pair of scissors. If you have a rotary cutter, use that for cutting out. Makes it a lot easier. Some fabric clips if you have them, or you can use pins. And grab a safety pin. And if you want to add a tag to your neck warmer, have that handy. You'll need a sewing machine or a serger. You can sew these by hand. It will just take a little bit longer, and I do have a tutorial showing you how to sew a stretch stitch by hand if you need to. I do have a free PDF download that you can print out that has all the measurements and the instructions on paper. That link will be in the description below. The first thing you want to do on your piece of fabric is to determine which side has the stretch to it. This side is not stretching very much, and this side has a lot of stretch to it. Now this is critical because if you sew it the wrong way, you're not going to be able to get this over your head. I have determined which side is the stretchy side, and to keep that straight, I'm just going to go down about 3 inches or 2.5 inches and put a safety pin in that side so I can remember. Fold the fabric in half with the stretch going the long way, and just line up those edges. And you can put a few clips in. Sometimes I don't even use clips. I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, start here, sew all the way down, back stitching at the beginning and at the end of the seam. If you're using a serger, just go ahead and serge down the edge. If you are going to use a regular sewing machine, you need to either use a zigzag stitch or this lightning bolt stitch. And I'm going to demonstrate on this little piece of fabric here so you can see how it works. You don't want to use just a straight stitch because when you stretch the fabric, the seam will pop and then you'll have an opening in your seam. I'll demonstrate first with the lightning bolt stitch, and then I'll show you just a regular zigzag stitch. Now let's change it to just a regular zigzag stitch. It doesn't have to be very wide, so I'm going to change the width down to maybe 1.5 and the length at 1. So can you see that little zigzaggy lightning bolt stitch? It's not very wide. And then on the zigzag stitch, and if I pulled that, sometimes you'll hear it even pop. Oh, did you hear that pop? That means there would be, look at that, a hole in your seam. And where I can pull this other, I'm really pulling that and it's not popping. All right, so that's if you're using a single needle machine. These lightning bolt and zigzag stitches will take a little bit longer, but it's worth it. If you have a serger, by all means use that, but it's not necessary. So you'll be using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. On the serger, that will be just barely cutting a little bit off, and on your single needle machine, it's usually just along the edge of your presser foot. Turn it the right side facing out. Fold this tube in on itself with the right sides facing each other. Line up your seam, flip that in place. If you want to, you can put a few other clips in. This seam right here is actually going to be the back of the neck warmer. So if you wanted to add a tag, this is the time to do it. When you add a tag, you put the folded edge inside with the raw edges facing out. I'm just going to put it in the bottom quarter, bottom half somewhere of the warmer. And you'll need to think about the seam allowance. So I'm leaving about a 1/2 inch, because when I do my seam allowance, I want a little bit of that white to show. I like to baste it in place. That way, when I'm sewing, it doesn't go crooked. So I have basted that in place on the inside of the bottom portion. And I'll go ahead and put a clip there. We're going to sew all the way around, but you want to leave a 4-inch opening so that we can turn it inside out. And if you're using clips, well, you can also do this with pins, just so to help you remember where to leave the opening, is I like to use red clips. So I'm going to put a red clip there and go down about 3 to 4 inches, and I'm going to put another red clip. Just a little tip there, so I know not to sew in that portion. I'll start at one of those clips, and on the serger you can just angle in or just lift up your presser foot and stick it underneath. Again, I'm using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Let's turn it right side facing out. And this will be on the inside of the neck warmer. So we need to close that off. There's a couple different ways you can do that. Take your fingers and insert them and gently pull, and it will fold the seam allowance inside. Just pull it like that. Fold the edges the same as the seam allowance. Just clip it in place. You can take it to the sewing machine, use a straight stitch, doesn't have to be the zigzag stitch, and right close to the edge, like 1/8 of an inch, sew down that opening. Or you can use the needle and thread. It makes it a little bit smoother, but it does take a little bit more time. If you do want a little bit more finished look, I'm going to show you the ladder stitch that will close that up really nicely. Take your needle and insert it at the end of that opening from the inside out, and I've knotted the end of my thread. Seam allowances are tucked inside. Take a stitch inside that fold right close to where the needle thread comes out, and then take another stitch, go across, take a stitch just in that fold, and it's just a very little stitch, and you just continue all the way down the end. Pretty simple. If you do use the sewing machine, that's what it will look like. So not too bad, especially if you use the same color of thread, but there is a little bit of a bump there, and this is pretty smooth. When you get to the end of the opening, just tuck your threads down in there, take a little tiny stitch, pull it until there's just a little loop, and wrap your needle around your thread a couple times inside that loop, and hold it while you pull it, and it will make a knot right close to the edge of the fabric. And to hide that knot, we're just going to take a little stitch into the fabric between the layers and come out and pull it. Then you can clip your thread. So just a little extra bonus tip right there on how to sew any kind of opening closed with a hidden stitch. Look how nice that looks. Flip the right side out, and you're ready to put that over your head and around your neck. The stretch is in the right way. Pretty simple project. Let's go over how to make it 2 colors and reversible. I have cut out 2 pieces, 21 by 11 inches. You want the long stretchy piece to be the 21 inches. The longer is the stretchy. And you'll just sew along the long edges, either using a serger or your single needle machine. I've sewn the top and the bottom along the edges. Turn it right side facing out. Fold it in on itself with the right sides facing each other. Line up your seams. You still need to leave that 3-inch opening. I'm using my red clips. And I'm not going to put a tag on the reversible because on one side you're going to have that tag irritating the back of your neck. So I will leave the tag off and just sew all the way around, leaving the opening. When you are making them reversible, I would recommend using the needle and thread to close off your opening. That way when this side is facing out, you don't have that seam showing. Pretty simple, right? Thanks for watching. Click on that subscribe button if you haven't already. Have a wonderful day. Have fun sewing. We'll see you next time.